together with United Nations University, Sophia University in Japan, the Ministry of Environment of Japan, BirdLife International, Center for Regional Sustainability Initiatives, University of Victoria in Canada, and the North Australia Indigenous Land and Sea Management Alliance. So that's a mouthful. I hope you can get copies of the program on the website. So just as a backgrounder, and just to roughly describe the 2 hours that we're going to spend, we're going to have 3 sub-sessions in this particular session, and it will be the first session will be facilitated separately from the second and the third, but we will then have a wrap-up at the end, and then a closing. Just signal if I'm saying the wrong thing. Yeah? So this is organized by 3 women, so you better be careful. So that's just like to acknowledge Marjo from UNU on that side, and Anne McDonald from Sophia University on this side. And the second session is going to be facilitated ably by Phil, who's agreed to, the only male in the facilitators group. So he's our muse for the day. Okay, so as a background for people who are coming in at this stage in this process, there are 2 strands of thinking which came from different directions and have come together at this particular session. The first one was actually a series of meetings that was organized from 2009 at the Global Oceans Conference on traditional knowledge and marine management. Then in 2011, it was followed by International Marine Conservation Congress on again a discussion on traditional knowledge and marine management with a focus on connectivity, and that was a Pan-Pacific discussion. And then in 2010, of course, you had the CBD COP10. Following after that is the initiative from CBD, which is basically called the Sustainable Oceans Initiative, which brings together the Target 6 and Target 11, marine protected areas and fisheries. So that's one strand of discussions that came about. From the ICRI, the International Coral Reef Initiative came about also a different strand of discussion, emanating from trying to understand how we can actually operationalize Target 11. And from this discussion, there was an acknowledgement that sometimes what is thought of as a Western definition of marine protected areas doesn't exactly apply to how Asians have used their resources, or a concept of resource use in the Asian region. Of all the regions in the world, we have the most number of people. We love our fish, and no place in our oceans do we not have fishers actually accessing those resources. So we needed to find a mechanism to actually try to see how we can achieve Target 11, at the same time appreciating what needs to be done in terms of fisheries and sustainable fisheries. So we had an event at the Asia Regional Forum here also in Korea, actually trying to get some examples of that. And so now we've joined up with the initiative that has come from one strand, and we're joining up to actually cover Asia Pacific and seeing how we can have synergize our thoughts and work together more. So the presentations are actually hopefully going to advance us in terms of the discussions in this area. We will have a slight change in the program in terms of the sequence for the first session. So the first session is basically focusing on reaching targets on marine protected areas and other area-based conservation initiatives and fisheries. And so for this session, we will start off with a presentation from Risa, who is with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, followed by a presentation from Japan, from Wild Bird Society of Japan, and then followed with a presentation from the Philippines, and then another again, we'll go back to Japan, and then a presentation from Vanuatu, which will try to energize the discussions. I hope not to energize, but enough to actually get us going in terms of advancing the discussions on this. So without further ado, I'd like to request the first presenter. Clarissa Rida is the program director for the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. The ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is an intergovernmental body, and they just had a session actually on Aichi targets here in Korea during the PEMC conference last month, I think. So, Lisa. So please give her a welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Christy. Hope everyone is awake after your lunch. As Krista mentioned, last month during the East Asian CIS Congress that was held here in Korea in Changwon, we did a joint session with the PEMC, Partnership for Environmental Management for the CIS of East Asia. It's also a big conference like this, and the focus on achieving the Aichi targets through effective management of marine protected areas and integrated coastal management. So my presentation will focus on the key outcomes of the discussion of this conference. And again, we are now nearing the 2020 deadline. It's been 2 years since the COP10, and it's like we only have eight years to go again to look at our progress on achieving the 2020 target, and we hope that we could learn from our performances and lessons of achieving the 2010 target, which most of us have not fully fulfilled. Some successful approaches to conserve coastal and marine biodiversity have been exemplified in a number of success stories also on marine protected areas, particularly in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, involving local communities and various stakeholders in developing and establishing marine sanctuaries to marine protected areas. But on a larger scale and in a more systematic way, the development and application of integrated coastal management have been demonstrated as well in several sites of the PEMC in this region, and I will give some examples of that later. And we are particularly looking at Target 7 and Target 11, we call it the Target 7-11, particular focus of our collaboration with PEMC, our center, the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, and the PEMC program. Where part of the conclusions in the Changwon meetings that indeed MPA is a useful tool to achieve conservation of marine biodiversity and sustainable use of marine ecosystem services. And there are a number of initiatives that are ongoing both at the national and regional levels, and this include the Coral Triangle Initiative on coral reefs, fisheries, and food security, and support for regional institutions like PEMC, the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, and the APEC Marine Sustainable Development Center based in China, in Xiamen. Now, going into the integrated coastal management and the PEMC lessons, they have developed a framework, what they call the ICM framework. This is a framework and a process as well, as a means to strengthen and enable the achievement of MPA objectives in conserving biodiversity and looking at food security. And such processes have taken into account biodiversity and ecosystem services, as well as the economic base of human well-being, providing for livelihoods and economic development. And these integrated approaches, such as ICM, are being done at the local and national levels to create enabling environments to marine protected area, management effectiveness that involve area-based measures such as marine spatial planning, patrolling, demarcation of boundaries, monitoring and evaluation, information system, and non-area-based measures. So they're looking not just on protecting sites, but looking at how other stakeholders are involved in the integrated coastal management process. And the key elements of this ICM process that are being promoted by PEMC and also ACD involve the usual partnership among stakeholders, particularly involving the local government, and on-the-ground action to manage various sustainable development concerns. and the implementation of the ICM cycle and continuous improvement of this, looking at the role of its stakeholders. And the PEMC has developed a state-of-the-coast monitoring system that are relevant to local and international sustainable development targets. And there have been a number of on-the-ground activities using the ICM process. And if you can see from this list, it's a whole range of interventions of the local communities in Cambodia and Sihanoukville, looking at community solid waste management, water conservation, and in Thailand, blue crab conservation, what they call blue crab condominiums and hatcheries. And in Batangas, Philippines, looking at Baywatch program, and also in some in China, sea use and land use planning. So this whole list of integrated coastal management elements that are being put together by PEMC, involving their national focal points and NGOs. So the key outcomes of the Changwon meeting included the recognition of the integrated coastal management, its character of integratedness, integrating sustainable use and marine protected areas, and into the land use and sea plans, and using the HU target to review ICM practices, programs, and projects to evaluate its contribution to achieving this global targets. So we are trying to develop a monitoring system with PEMC in terms of looking at this contribution, because normally when we implement multilateral environmental conventions, we do it on a silo approach, and this time what we're trying to do is to look at the various commitments of the parties in terms of implementing the multilateral environmental conventions, not only in the CBD, but also even IMO conventions on related to pollution. So the ICM framework that is developed by PEMC looks at this more holistic and integrated approach of contributing to the achievement of the HU target. So the establishment of MPA networks involving different kinds of MPAs as well as non-area-based measures should be combined appropriately so that they could produce synergistic effects at the national and regional level. Pardon me for the past presentation, because I was being requested to limit my presentation for 6 minutes. But in essence, so again, these are the other elements, looking at fisheries management, fishing fleet management and seasonal timing in terms of closing fisheries during various seasons, ecosystem-based approaches in fishery management, and co-management responsibilities among the local constituencies. In the meeting, because the key theme of the Changwon East Asian Seas Congress is looking at the blue economy, how coastal and marine biodiversity contributes to blue economy, and indeed looking at addressing harmful subsidies and promoting positive incentives for biodiversity conservation is one of the areas that is being looked at to contribute to the blue economy. And there are also considerations in terms of looking at the global consumption pattern that needs to take into consideration the ecological limits of ecosystems. So these are the key elements apart from partnership, coordination, and engaging other key stakeholders. Our center, the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, and the Partnership for Environmental Management for the Seas of East Asia, or the PEMC, we are collaborating and taking a conscious effort to strengthen the selection, utilization, and networking and management effectiveness of protected areas by converging ICM scaling up with key biodiversity areas, MPA networking, and capacity enabling activities in biodiversity and fisheries hotspots over the next 5 years. So consciously, we are looking at pilot areas where we can work together to apply the ICM approach. And this is our way of mainstreaming biodiversity with our regional programs and take a conscious effort towards contributing to the CBD objectives. Scope 11 this year focuses on one of the 4 things of COP 11 is on marine and coastal biodiversity. We are looking at enhanced cooperation across borders for conservation and sustainable management of coastal and marine biodiversity, and the 5-year sustainable strategy of the Seas of East Asia being implemented by PEMC is our main avenue for achieving this and contributing to the CBD target. And we hope that with this framework and as a way of further collaboration to enhancing and achieving the H target, the others could also learn from the various examples of on-the-ground activities initiated by PEMC and also by our center. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Riza. So we have a second presentation from Yutaka Yamamoto from the Wildlife Society of Japan. He is the Chief of the Conservation Division of Wildlife Society of Japan.
Hello everyone, I'm Yutaka Yamamoto. I'm a staff member of Wildlife Society of Japan. My presentation is on the using the Japanese mullet to identify marine important bird areas, marine IBS in Japan, and exerting efforts towards the locally managed conservation on Yakushima Island. The Japanese mullet is a small seabird. It is listed as vulnerable to extension by the IUCN and Ministry of the Environmental Risk. The distribution is restricted to the central and southern parts of Japan and southern part of South Korea. We conducted 6-4 survey and land survey at 9 islands to know the breeding status and at-sea distribution of Japanese mullet on the northern East Island, located in the central part of Japan in the Pacific Ocean between 2009 and 2011. We also predicted at-sea distribution by using a habitat model. Based on the land surveys on 9 islands, we confirmed that mullets were breeding because of the evidence of egg and egg shells. I will show you some photos of this evidence. Mullet colony is usually covered by Elmis grass, soils and rocky outcrops. Here is a mullet nest and incubating adult bird and eggs. Maximum of 547 and average of 408 birds were counted during at-sea surveys. And we conducted that area. This area is the second largest concentration of the Japanese mullet in Japan. Now let me explain how the idea of marine protected areas called MPS and ecologically and biologically significant areas called EXAs have developed in Japan. In 2008, the conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity adopted criteria and guidance for identifying the conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity adopted criteria and guidance for identifying EXAs. In 2010, the CBD set the target of establishing 10% of MPAs, which was announced at the Aichi target level. Following the Aichi target, the Ministry of the Environment in Japan developed the marine biodiversity strategy and started identifying MPAs last year. Also, along with the identification of MPAs, the Japanese government has started the identification of EXAs. Marine IBS will be incorporated into the identification process. So what were marine IBS? BirdLife International's important bird areas program started in the 1980s, using a set of standardized, globally agreed criteria to identify critical areas for the conservation of birds and biodiversity. Now, the idea of IBS are expanded to the ocean. Seabirds are an indicator as to the state of the marine environment and can help to identify key sites for marine biodiversity conservation. Wildlife Society of Japan has a partnership with BirdLife International and started a marine IBS project in Japan 2 years ago. We think that marine IBS can provide essential baseline information for establishing MPAs and EFSAs in Japan. There are several ways to identify marine IBS, and I will show you an example. Orange strategy which are specific for each species are identified, and seaward extensions are taken around breeding colonies using the foraging strategy. These seaward